Welcome to Scrap and Coffee. I'm going to start a new project today using the Flora No.3 collection by Cardstock. And I'm going to do it a little bit different than I usually do because I'm going to use my pattern paper to wrap the cover. So I've already selected two papers that I'm going to use, and I also had some ribbon in my stash that I think will combine with it pretty nice. So I've already cut my chipboard, but I'm going to try with this project to go step by step with you. Our cover pieces measure 6.5 by 6.5, and the spine is 6.5 by 2 inches. And I've used this pattern to go on the front and back cover. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it to 7.5 inches, and that gives me 1/2 inch on top and bottom of my chipboard. So I made that cut first, and then I have that leftover piece that I can use on the album if I want to. So it's 7.5 inches. And then I'm going to cut this in half, so I'm going to make the cut at 6 inches. And I need to do that with my ruler, because on this paper trimmer the measurements between the 5 3/4 and 6 1/4 are quite hard to read. So my next step will be to make some pencil lines on the back. So I'm just going to make sure that I have them in the right direction, so in the right orientation. And then what I will do is make a pencil line on 3 sides, 1/2 inch from the cut edge. So on one of the longer sides and on the bottom and the top. And I will do that for both pieces. So you want to do that mirrored on your pieces and in a way that they are in the right orientation. So this is your guideline for placing your chipboard on there. You can also eyeball it, but I find it easy to make those pencil lines. And then I have my chipboard pieces here, and don't mind the white arrows on there. That's just for me. I was a little bit off with cutting my chipboard, but your pieces should be square, so it doesn't matter how you place them. It's all the same measurement all around. So I'm going to place some 3/8 inch tape here, and what I'm doing is I'm going to measure to where my pattern paper will be approximately. It's not but it should be about 5.5 inches onto the chipboard. So I'm just making a pencil line there, and that's just for me a guideline so that I don't place tape where it's going to show and I'm going to stick my chipboard to my work surface. And of course you can go with this however you prefer, however you like. Maybe you have a better way of doing this. I'm not often doing this, wrapping the chipboard with the pattern paper. But I know with the Cardstock paper that it's really suitable for it. It's a nice sturdy paper that can really hold up without cracking. And also this collection is just perfect for it. So I will do the same thing on the other side, and I will also place some 1/4 inch tape on the larger area just to fill it in a little bit more. And what I will also do is place a little bit of double-sided tape along the edge of the pattern paper on the side where I didn't have a pencil line, so the one that's going to be stuck down onto the chipboard. So and that way I make sure that that edge of the cardstock is nicely stuck down as well. So I just go from the pencil line to pencil line. And using this technique made it possible for me to use the same pattern paper on my front and back cover. So you just make the papers work for you. So again, I just check my orientation of the paper like 100 times in this project. So now what I will do is just place that chipboard on that pattern paper in a way that I have that 1/2 inch border on 3 sides of the chipboard. So we are going to stick that down. So we need to remove all of our tape backing here. And I'm not doing any inking on this project. So just remove it all. I'm not going to combine it with any wet glue. This is it. And then just make sure that you have that piece where there is no tape on the chipboard on the right side, of course. And I'm just going to use my pencil marks to guide me on where to place that chipboard. And then before I really push on it, I'm checking if I don't have any tape sticking out, but I was fine. So you will do exactly the same thing on that other piece. And then when we have them both on there, I'm going to mark where I'm going to mine on my corners, but you can also eyeball that, or yeah, whatever, however you prefer to do it. And again, I'm using double-sided tape here, so this is actually what I do on a regular cover as well. I'm just placing a little bit of tape on the edge of the cardstock, and I will place it also on the edge of the chipboard, and I will just start placing it where the pattern paper starts, and then from corner to corner. And you do that on all three sides where the cardstock pokes out. So after I've placed the tape, I actually miter the corners. I just like to do it after I've placed my tape. And by drawing the line before I place the tape, that helps me to see where I need to start placing the tape. And now I'm going to use a little score/embossing tool to pre-score the pattern paper a little bit. It helps in prevent of the cracking. So I'm just going over 2 or 3 times along the edge of the chipboard, giving it a little bit of pressure. And then I will pre-fold the pattern paper by just pushing it down on my work surface. And then the next step is to fold it all over and stick it down. So we are going to start by removing the tape backing, and I always like to combine it with a little bit of wet glue. Again, that's just a personal preference, and you can go with this however you prefer to do it, of course. So I just place a little strip along the edge of the chipboard. And then I use my bone folder to fold that over. And then we are going to do that on the other side as well. So same thing there. And then on the edges, before you're going to fold this over, you need to fold in your little overhang of pattern paper in this case. So I'm just going with my bone folder and just push that up against the corner of the chipboard, make it flat. And I did notice this is quite thick cardstock, this pattern paper, and I had a little bit of trouble in getting a nice clean corner, but I just worked that a little bit more with my bone folder. You can see that in a minute, but I just try to fold it in as best as I can and make it flat. And then again, place a little bit of wet glue there and then fold it over. And then just stick that down, and I just wasn't quite happy with the corner, so I just worked that corner with my bone folder a little bit more until I am satisfied. And you don't always get it perfect, that's just the way it is, and that's fine. It's handmade, so we don't have to make it all perfect, although we might want it to be perfect. Okay, so after we've done both of them, this is what we've got, and then we need to do the spine part. And for the spine, I'm going to use that really soft green, and there's a little bit of pattern in there of a darker green flower. It was really, it's a really beautiful paper. And I'm going to cut this. First I'm going to cut off that strip, and then I'm going to cut off a piece that is, I think I went for 5 1/4, but 5 will be fine as well, for example. Just need to make sure that you have enough overlapping onto your front and back side cover. So I've cut it at 5 1/4 by 7 1/2. So again, I have 1/2 inch on the top and the bottom of my spine. So again, I'm going to make some pencil lines in order to place my spine piece nicely centered on that pattern paper. But first I will place some double-sided tape along the edge of the spine chipboard piece, like you can see there. And now I'm going to make that pencil mark. So I'm going on the short end, on the 5 1/4 end, I'm going to mark 1/2 inch from the cut edge. And what I will also do is find the center of that side. That's, I believe it was 2 5/8 inch. And then from the center, I'm going to make a pencil mark 1 inch from the center on both sides. So they are 2 inches from each other. And I'm going to do that on the other short side as well. So the same thing, I'm going to mark a line 1/2 inch, and I'm going to find the center at 2 5/8 inch, and then mark it 1 inch from the center on both sides. And I'm going to connect those lines over the longer side, connect those pencil marks. And then the spine piece should fit in the rectangle that you've just created. And then it's nicely centered on there. And that will also mean that the amount of space that will wrap over your front cover will be the same as the amount of space that will wrap over your backside cover. And it doesn't have to be exact, but it's nice if it's somewhat exact. So remove the tape backing and then just carefully place that on that piece of pattern paper. Like that, and then give that a burnish. And now what I like to do, we have to determine the space between our chipboard pieces, and this is a tape that I buy at Walmart. I've used it often in my videos. It's really cheap. It's sold as 1/8 inch tape, but it's actually more like 3/16 inch, and to me that's the perfect space between your chipboard pieces. Well, if you don't have this, you can use, of course, 1/4 inch tape, or you can just make a pencil mark 1/4 inch from your chipboard edge to determine the space between your chipboard pieces, or use some kind of tool that you have. Several options are possible, but I just really love to use this tape. I prefer this, the 3/16 over the 1/4 inch. So now what I will do is I'm going to place some double-sided tape along the cut edge on the longer side, and I just go from that pencil line at 1/2 inch to the pencil line on the other side. And I will also place some just a little bit away from our spacing tape. As you can see me doing right here. And then I later on also placed one more strip in between those two strips, just to make it a little more secure. And what I also did is cover the edges of the chipboard on the front and back side cover that was still showing, just to make sure that all the edges are nicely have a nice stick on them. So again, check the orientation of your papers. So my spine piece is lying in the right orientation, and now I also have to place my front and back side cover in the right orientation. So this is how I'm going to attach it. Now you leave your spacer tape on there if you use that, and just remove the other tape backing if you are using double-sided tape. And then I'm going to place that, oh yeah, of course, remove that tape backing as well, if it wants to cooperate, that is. And I'm also going to use my ruler to make sure that I'm straight on the bottom edge of the chipboard. So it's just a little extra security for me. So I'm lining it up with that spacing tape and with the bottom of with the ruler, and then it's on there. Just give that a quick burnish, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the other chipboard. The front or back side cover. I'm not sure what it is, but for that I'm going to turn it around so I can work on my right hand side. It's easier for me. So again, I'm just removing the tape backing, but I leave the tape backing of the spacer tape on there for now. And now, because I cut my chipboard a little off, again checking the orientation, but I was good. I'm placing my ruler on the top of the piece, so that's on the same side that I did it on the previous placing, the previous piece that we've placed. So make sure that one edge is completely lined up. And then again burnish that. So now I'm going to place some double-sided tape, and this is 1/4 inch tape that I'm using for most of the time actually. I'm going to place it again along the cut edge of the pattern paper, and I'm going to place it on the edge of the chipboard. And before you do that and you use spacing tape, then you have to remove that tape backing. That's something that I intend to forget sometimes. But this time I was okay. And what I also like to do is place that double-sided tape in the gusset, in the space between your chipboard pieces. So I'm using a thin bone folder to really push the tape in there, and I feel that it helps a little bit with having a nice closing cover. So just those little things that can help with that. So again, on the chipboard I'm just eyeballing that I place that tape on where the pattern paper starts. So you do that on the top and on the bottom. And then again, I'm also using that little scoring tool to pre-score that pattern paper there along the edge to prevent cracking of the pattern paper. And I forget to pre-fold it here, but I do suggest that you do that, but it's not a big deal if you don't do it. And again, I'm also placing a little bit of wet glue there. So now I'm just pre-folding it with my hand a little bit, and then I go in with my bone folder and just fold it over. And try to stick it down on the spine part first and then work your way out, but it's quite difficult. I found it was quite difficult with a 1/2 inch strip. So now what I'm going to do is, again with a little bit of a thinner bone folder, I will burnish the gussets between the chipboard. I will burnish the cardstock against the chipboard edges and then slowly lift up my cover so you kind of train the paper to bend. And you will do that on both sides, of course. And then you can close your cover, and this is the base of the cover, nicely wrapped in pattern paper. So now I was looking for something to hide that overlapping of the papers a little bit, and I had this small ribbon in my stash. It's 1/4 inch ribbon, and I bought it when I was in Europe in January. It's a store that's not here in Northern America, so sorry for that. And that goes for both the ribbons that you will see me use. I've bought this as for the people that are watching from Europe. It's a really difficult name, but it's a Danish store. It's called something like Sustrene Grene. but they have really fun crafting stuff. I really wish we had that here, but we don't. So yeah, just see if you have a store like that around you, because you can find some really fun stuff there. So I'm also preparing a piece of white cardstock to cover the spine on the inside of the cover, and this is cut to 6 1/4, and I've cut it to 8 inches, but to be quite honest, if you cut it to like 6 1/2, that would be fine. You don't need this large piece, and you also need to cover it quite generous with double-sided tape. So the smaller you cut it, the better actually in that case. But I was just checking, like, am I going to place this white first or am I going to do the ribbon first? But it's better to do the ribbon first, so we can hide that with that white cardstock. So what I'm going to do is place some double-sided tape, and for this one I'm going to do that on the more uglier side of the ribbon. And again, I'm using that tape that I bought at Walmart, that is 3/16 of an inch, because this ribbon is 1/4 inch and that other tape just fitted on there perfectly, so I'm just going for that one. But of course you can attach this in any way you like using fabric tack, or maybe your art glitter glue would work as well. I don't know, actually, never tried it. But I'm kind of messy with those sort of things, and I just want it to be clean, so that's why I'm taking the effort of backing this ribbon with that double-sided tape. And because I already know that I'm going to cover it with the cardstock and giving it some extra strength, I'm also not worried that this might not be strong enough or something. I think it's fine. So it's quite a struggle to get it on there without having any overhang, but it's better than having glue flying around everywhere in my case. So I'm going to do this for both strips, and then it's actually really easy because this tape on there makes the ribbon pretty, a little bit more sturdy, so it's quite easy to work with now. So I'm just going to make sure that I have overhang on the top and the bottom. Try to remove the tape backing. That's the hard part actually. So just make sure that you overlap that where the papers come together and have enough overhang on top and bottom. Just turn the cover over and fold it over. And give that a little bit of a burnish. And I thought that this color of ribbon went pretty nice with the papers. It's like a soft purple violet tone color. So now I'm going to place that white in there, and you see you have quite the overlapping onto my front and back side cover, so you can do it with a lot smaller of a piece. So I've backed this white cardstock with double-sided tape completely, and I think that's the best way to go, because if you just do the edges, then there might be air underneath and you get air bubbles, if it will come off. I think it's best to just cover it completely. So for this album I'm not going to make an actual hinge. I'm going to use more of a, I think people call it stack the deck or something. But you will see in the next video when we work on the inside. It's going to be a really easy technique that's really easy also if you never have made a mini album before. This is really something fun to start with. So I'm just dropping the paper where I want it, and then I apply pressure on the spine, and now I'm going to burnish it in the chipboard gusset on this side here. And again, while I'm doing that, I'm starting to lift up my cover slowly so I can train the paper and break down the fibers in the paper so it doesn't crack on me. And now I'm going to burnish that side piece on the front inside cover here. So the other side is also still hanging loose there a little bit. So again, I'm just going to find that gusset, burnish it in there from the spine. Lift up that cover slowly to train that paper, break the fibers down, take your time, you don't have to go too fast. Better safe than sorry. And again, then I'm going to burnish it down onto the back inside cover. And again, this is just something that for my feel, my personal feel, helps with having a nice closing cover. So that is how it looks as of now. Make sure that you have the right side up. But at this stage it doesn't really matter, of course. And then what I will also be doing is use this wider ribbon as closure for the album. It's not something that I do very often, but I thought in this case it was really suitable. So I'm just going to cut a piece. I'm just eyeballing the length of this, and I just cut 2 pieces of it at the same length. And I'm going to place that centered, one on the front inside cover and one on the back inside cover. And in order to make sure that I have it somewhat exact, I'm going to mark that. Now this ribbon was 1 inch wide. So what I'm going to do here again is I'm going to look for the center, and these covers are 6.5 inches. So the center is at 3 1/4. And from the center, I'm going to mark 1/2 inch on both sides so that they are 1 inch apart, and that's the width of my ribbon. So I'm doing that on the edge, and I'm doing that a little bit further in on the cover. And then again, I'm just connecting those pencil marks so that I have a guideline on placing my ribbon. And I'm only making the line on the showable chipboard, so I'm sure that I'm going to cover that up with paper, of course. So I'm going to do that on both sides, and then I'm placing some double-sided tape here. And in this case, I'm doing that on the pretty side of the ribbon. So I'm just eyeballing. I'm going about 2.5 inches maybe here. I'm just placing 2 strips on there. And then when I'm going to place that in the cover, I'm going to make sure that the tape doesn't go all the way to the edge of the cover. I'm going to stay away. Well, actually what I'm trying is to place it only on the showable chipboard, but in this case I had to go over a little bit onto the pattern paper, but I want to have at least 1/4 inch from my cover edge before the tape starts. And it doesn't matter in this case if you go over the white, because we are going to cover that up. Then I give that a good burnish, and I'm going to repeat this on the other side of the cover. And then in this case, because I'm not going to cover it up right now with paper, I'm just going to place some double-sided tape over it to give it a little bit of extra secureness. Just for now, and it helps with when we place our paper there, then we've already have our tape there. So now the actual base of the cover is done. And of course we are going to clean up this inside. But I also wanted to make a nice feature to go on the outside that we are going to use. So let's start with that. I've cut out a 3x4 element card out of the collection, and I've prepared some chipboard. And now I don't brought my measurements of this chipboard, but they will be in the cutting guide. I believe this is 3 3/4 by 4 3/4, both pieces of chipboard. And I'm going to draw a line at 3/8 inch from the edge. So I'm going to make a frame. So you will do that on all 4 sides. And if you have something like a Cricut maker that can cut chipboard, then that would be perfect for this, but I don't have that. So I'm just doing it by hand. And we are going to cut out that frame. So I'm going to show you on this piece. I'm just placing my ruler along that pencil line, hold that in place firmly, and then with a sharp utility knife I'm going over the line with not too much pressure, just a little bit of pressure, and I'm going over like 3 times, and I will do that on all 4 sides. Be careful when you do this. And then when I've done all 4 sides, I'm going over that cut without the ruler, trying to really get through the piece. Sometimes you are already through with those 3 cuts that you've made. And then I'm going to turn the piece over, and then you will see that you probably need to connect the corners on the back side in order to remove that inner piece a little bit. So that's what I'm doing here. So it's really doable to do this by hand, especially because they are just straight cuts, so it's quite easy to do. And I believe it was on this piece that one corner didn't come out pretty good, so I needed to clean that up. And again, when you do this, please be careful. So I just needed to work that corner a little bit more because that didn't come out completely. There we go. So now we have 2 frames, 3/8 inch frames, and I've got 2 pieces of cardstock. Now I had this solid cardstock that I've bought at Michael's. It's from Recollection, 65 pounds, and this color just went perfectly with this collection, so I've decided to use it. So I've got this a little smaller than the chipboard piece. I think it's 3 5/8 by 4 5/8, but it will be in the cutting guide. So I'm just going to place this using some double-sided tape, and I'm placing my tape along the perimeter of the frame, so on the inside of this chipboard here. And I just go on all 4 sides for that. And then remove that tape backing. And then I'm going to place that piece of solid cardstock on there where I'm covering up the tape completely. So you can also use some pattern paper out of the collection for this, of course, but I had this paper and I wanted to use this. So then turn it over, and now I'm going to cut that inside frame where I leave about 3/8 inch of a border on the inside on all 4 sides. So I'm just eyeballing it here. It doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be straight. That's all fine. So take that out, and now I'm going to use, I have this really small double-sided tape that's not even 1/8 of an inch, and I'm going to place it around the perimeter on the cardstock here. Now you can also just use wet glue or use a little bit of a wider tape as long as it fits on there. And yeah, just use whatever you have. And then I'm going to make cuts from the chipboard corner towards the cardstock corner on all 4 sides. And again, I'm going to use my scoring tool to make a little score mark. And this is 65 pound cardstock, so I'm just going over once, that's more than enough. And then we can pre-fold that there, and I'm going to combine it here with the wet glue, because the tape that I've placed, that's really small tape, and that's just more to make sure that the edge is has a nice stick on it. So here I just removed tape backing from one of the longer sides. I'm just placing a little bit of wet glue over that, well, it's about 3/8 inch flap, and then I'm just going to use my hand to fold that over and then burnish it down on the chipboard frame here. And you're going to do this on all 4 sides. And then this is what we have, and this is actually your bad side, your ugly side. And this is going to be your good side. But not a lot of that is going to show on the end. So now I also have a piece of solid cardstock that is somewhat larger than the frame. I have about 1/2 inch all around. And again, I will have those measurements in the cutting guide for you. So here I'm just going to place some hot glitter glue on that frame, and I'm going to place it on that piece of cardstock as centered as I can get it. And carefully trying not to move the frame from its position, I'm going to give that a little burnish there. And I'm going to place some double-sided tape along the edge of the cardstock on all 4 sides. And here you also see me do that on the outer edge of the chipboard frame, but actually you can wait with that. You don't have to do it now, because this is not going to be enough eventually. I needed to place more. So here I'm going to do the same thing that I did on the other piece. I'm going to cut out the frame on the inside, but I wanted to show you that you can also do it a little bit more precise than I did before by drawing about a 3/8 inch frame on the inside, and then follow that pencil line with your knife if you feel more secure doing it that way, so you know when to stop your cut. So now we are doing the same thing that we did on the previous chipboard frame. Take that out, and then again I've placed that really small double-sided tape along the perimeter of that cardstock frame there, and make those cuts from corner to corner, and make a little score line there, and pre-fold it. And again, just like I did earlier, I'm going to combine this with wet glue, because the tape that I've placed here, yeah, that's not enough. So I'm just placing it over that 3/8 inch flap there and just fold it over. And I have that tape on that outside edge, if you have it, but like I said, it's better to do it later on. And here I was intent to fold that cardstock on top of that tape backing, so then remove it before you stick it down. So this is also prepared now. And then we also have a little piece of acetate. And I believe this was 3 3/8 by 4 3/8. So making sure that it fits, and I'm placing some double-sided tape along the perimeter of that acetate. Carefully when you burnish that. And we are going to stick that on the ugly side of our second chipboard frame. So now I'm going to place that, and just make sure that your tape doesn't overhang on the inside of the frame. You have nice coverage. And then carefully burnish that down. And I still have the tape backing on the edge of the chipboard here. That's still free in my case. And I thought that would be enough to stick our other chipboard frame on there, but the acetate is kind of messing that up. So what I needed to do is place some wider double-sided tape along that edge that also covered the acetate a little bit. So that's why I said you don't have to do it in the earlier stage. So here you see me placing 1/4 inch tape along that edge of the chipboard. So that I can line up the frames as good as I can. So I'm just going along the edge here a little bit. And we're going to place the first frame on top of that, and we are going to place it with the good side down. So your ugly side, the bad side, is facing you. And I'm trying to get it lined up as good as I can, but yeah, we've got those by hand, so they're not exactly the same. At least they are not in my case, and that's not a really big deal actually. So when I've got it where I wanted, I'm carefully burnishing that, and now I'm going to miter that corner of that cardstock a little bit there. And in this case I'm just eyeballing it a little bit. It's not something that I do often, but in this case I did. So you want to stay away from that chipboard corner a little bit. You want to have a little bit of cardstock still showing there. And now again I'm going to score this, and I'm going to fold this over. Now you can also wait with this until we've placed our element card on here, and then just go over that. That's also a possibility, but I just finished this and then later on placed the element card on the back side. So pre-fold everything, and again I'm just combining it with the wet glue. I just want to make sure. So again I'm just using my hand to fold it over, stick it down, and then burnish it onto the chipboard a little bit. So this you can just do on all 4 sides, and then you will have a nice frame with an acetate window in between. So it didn't really intend to become a shaker, but that's eventually what it did become. So here I have that 3x4 card out of the collection, and I need to place it on some white cardstock that is a little bit larger. Again, I think it's 3.5 by 4.5, the white cardstock, but I had about 1/4 inch border around my element card, and so I'm going to glue that on there, centered as best as I can, because the window is exactly the measurement of the 3x4 card, so you need something to stick it down, so you need something to back that. And here again I'm placing a little bit of double-sided tape along the cut edge of the white cardstock, and so we are going to attach it just like that, and you can do it like this. This would look great. I'm going to place it somewhere on my front cover. I'm still not sure where it's gonna go, but I thought it was something fun to use, so I was kind of in doubt, but eventually I did use it. I have these chunky glitter, it's from Recollections. The pink ones are little hearts and the other ones are, what is it, hexagon or hexagon shapes, I'm not sure. But I just threw a little bit. I don't like it if it's too much, just a little bit, and I threw it on the card for a very good reason, that I want to place the frame where I can see how the element card is coming through. And here I'm using a dryer sheet to get rid of the static a little bit on my acetate. But when you use a dryer sheet, you want to be really careful because you can really damage your acetate with them. And it was quite it's quite a bummer, because the day before I filmed this I had the anti-static powder tool in my hands and I didn't bought it, and I was like, why didn't I bought it? I don't know. But this works as well, you just have to be careful. So now I'm removing the tape backing and the glitter is on there, so you want to be really careful that it doesn't go everywhere. So now I'm placing the frame on top so that I can see that that element card is nicely centered. That's why I'm doing it this way. And then push it down and burnish that on the back side. You want to make really sure that you have a nice stick there so your glitter isn't coming out. So I think that looks pretty cute, and I'm going to place it on the front cover and probably add some more decorations to it, but I'm not sure what I'm going to do exactly. But I also will wait until the inside is done. So it's going on here somewhere, but at least now you've seen how it's made. And in the next video we will be working on the inside of this album, and I'm going to guarantee you it's going to be really easy. So I hope you join me in that video. For now, thank you for watching and enjoy the rest of your day.